Well, this is Shaw coming back on the channel to talk about the last two chapters in the book Chivalry. Boy, I hope you're liking this. This is the last installment of the book. It's good stuff, good conversation. If you're liking this content, give me a like, subscribe, and give me a comment below. Like the comments on this. Let's get to it. All right, Shaw, this will be the last installment of the book Chivalry by Peter Wright and Paul
And
Elam. Chapter 8 is Aggrieved Entitlement, Women's Reaction to Temporary Loss of Chivalry. And in our society, it might be permanent loss of chivalry here as we go forward. I don't know if it's going to be temporary. So he talks a lot about this concept of aggrieved entitlement, right? So I think nowadays with being woke and whatever, we hear a lot about entitlement. Like you have these entitlements and these people are entitled to this and blah, blah, blah. But he goes into this concept of agreed entitlement that women feel entitled to chivalry. And when they don't get it, then they have a psychological state of aggrieved entitlement to it, that this enrages them that they're
yeah,
getting what they are owed in chivalry. Here,
I,
what did you think of that?
I actually appreciated that term. It helped me to sort of understand a concept that I think was something I didn't think often about. And it's like that is true. It's like, when you take away something that they've just been receiving and they thought that was the normal,
Mm,
that was their reality, then it leads to this kind of just anger and frustration thrown at the person that they say is supposed to be giving them this whatever the utility value here is of chivalry,
yeah, yeah.
and
Which I think a good example. I think it talked about it too. Or maybe well, but the outrage when there was that cruise ship that sank, and
Mhm.
it wasn't women and children first. This was like in 2010 or somewhere in there.
Yeah.
It wasn't women and children first. It was just like every man for himself, and
Hmm.
just the outrage of what, what happened to chivalry and blah blah and the Titanic and yada yada yada. And I was just hearing what yesterday about the Titanic and the death rate of men was, I forgot what the percentage was, but it was like men as young as even like 10 years old, or boys as young as like 10 years
Wow.
old were
Wow.
still saying, no, I won't get on the lifeboat, even though they had
Wow.
room on the life. But 10 years old, and it was like, yeah, you're dying too with the rest of the men. It's crazy.
That is crazy.
But luckily today,
It's different now,
it's
huh?
different now. 10-year
Yeah,
year old boys, 20-year-old men, 30-year-olds, they're saying,
out
nah,
of my way.
get
I'm
out
getting
of
on
the
this
way.
lifeboat.
My life is worth just as much as yours, woman.
Pushing people out. Get out of the way. You're in the way. Move.
If you, I mean, there's part of me, boy, maybe this is a dark side, but if I was on a ship like that, I'd just be like, if you're a single woman with no children, yeah, look
My
out.
first
I'm
thought
getting,
was going to be you got kids to get home to. You got a wife and kids. You're
yeah,
a family, quite
yeah.
literally.
But I mean, like, if you're a woman that's childless and you're getting on that boat, I'd be like, nah, I'm tossing you over. Like,
Yeah. Might be best for
if you're a mother with children, that's okay, mom and pop.
Yeah, that's good. Exactly. I'd
But
probably feel pretty rotten
yeah,
about that.
single woman,
You,
no children, I'd be like, hey, me and you are equal here. You're
we
getting
got to
tossed
be
over.
equally chivalrous at this point.
Boy,
You
that's
know,
dark, huh?
it's funny because so the example you bring up is like something that is like really big, but this aggrieved entitlement I think manifests in many small ways too. And the one that comes to mind is like expecting people to get up on the subway or like
Oh
if you're on a
yeah,
train or something or a bus.
yeah,
And typically be like, oh, a woman, here, let me offer you my seat. But instead, that or like holding the door open, or if you're coming out of the grocery store and there's someone and they got like some heavy things to put in their trunk or something. And,
yeah.
would you do that? I'd probably stop for like an older, like if the person really did look weak, whether it was man or woman, I'd probably, if they caught my eye or something. But other than that,
Yeah.
I'd probably just keep going. Or if someone had a flat tire on the side of the road,
Well, do you
would you
normally
stop?
hold doors open for, let's say
I
you're
do
like
it
walking into a place and
every single person, whether it's man or woman, if they're like within like my conscious purview and I know like I've registered they're coming in, I will typically stand there and just hold the door for them.
Like
Um,
you open the door and then hold it open and they go in.
no, it's typically like I'm going in, but I might just have my arm out and keep it open for them. Or
Okay,
if
that's
I'm
what I do
leaving,
too. Yeah, because
yeah,
I usually kind of like try to hold, but I don't normally open other than for my wife. Like I don't
yeah.
normally open
Oh
it up.
yeah. No, I wouldn't do that. Like especially I would just open the door and then I'd kind of just if I notice someone behind me, I'll just give them an extra
Yeah,
second buffer there. And
just
if
hold it.
I'm
Okay,
leaving,
so we're on the
yeah, and if
same
I'm
page.
leaving, I'll do the same. Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't. That would probably be a little weird. I mean,
I
the only
mean, wait
time
a
I do
minute.
do that, I'll be honest, is if I'm on a date with somebody. That will that will come out of me.
That's good.
But
That's
we're going in there together. It's just
Yeah, that's
it's
okay. I
different.
mean, you got to show that you're playing the game here.
I I'm still
We
dealing with
all
the
know the game.
enculturation. You know, the conditioning was too much in the 90s.
Yeah, we all know the game. I mean, it's good.
Yeah.
You got to play the game a little bit, right?
Yeah, I was thinking of something else too. Gosh, I had another example in my mind, and it slipped my mind. But there's just all these small versions of it, which is interesting because it's like, oh well, why don't men do this anymore? But it's like, well, obviously, I mean, feminism and all these other things.
Mm, yeah.
You know,
Have you ever had a woman get mad at you for not like opening up holding the door or something like that?
I can't think of mad at me specifically, but I can think of something in my last job. Well, a couple jobs ago, actually. And there was something that happened. And this lady was like, she was not a nice lady, but she was older. Like, so she was probably in her like 50s. So she was a little older, but something happened. I wasn't there exactly, but so she didn't really get mad at me, but I just saw her get mad because they were dealing with something out front. She was like, "Where are the men at? Where are all the men at?" And I remember my coworker kind of smiling about that with me because it was just like, what do you mean,
Man, you killed
And
a
we
poor
have a sheriff's
person.
detail right there, literally. So there was police
Oh,
officers, like,
yeah. No, I was
but it was
saying,
just funny because she was mad about this, like,
well, the one thing that sticks out in my mind, I was in Colorado and I went into a Chipotle and there's a woman behind me and I think she had something in her hands.
Mhm.
And for like this was just kind of a brain fart. Like I should have been just courteous and like held the door open for her, but I didn't. I just went in and it just slammed behind her. This is probably one of the few times that this woman was like, she looked at me and she's like, "Excuse me." And
Yeah.
she like went in and I was like, "Oh, okay."
What,
And,
did you say she was older too, or was she like around your age or
I
younger?
mean, she was older than me. She's probably middle aged, like 45 or something.
Okay, yeah, that's not old enough in my opinion. Like if you're like visibly like like grandma level, then I will. That's different because then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna feel really bad if I didn't do this. But if they're like my age or younger, all bets are off at this
Yeah,
point.
whatever. Yeah, I did kind of feel like because I was like, well, that was kind of a brain fart. Like I should have
Yeah, it
wasn't.
wasn't on purpose. It was an
Yeah, it's just like I
accident.
wasn't thinking. I don't know. It was just
Yeah.
in another place or something. And but man, she was mad. I still remember that. It was funny.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing where yeah, I would feel a little bad. Like, I don't want to make people mad or whatever, but you weren't even thinking about doing it. One thing I did like about this chapter, especially with the Ernest Belfax quote, is when he talked about this kind of aggressive weakness.
Mm.
And that was another thing that made me think, it just kind of put a name to something I think I've noticed, but didn't really know what to call before, because it's like you have somebody who is operating off this idea that they're supposed to be weaker. So it's like, oh, you are supposed to help them with getting the water bottles in the
Ooh.
trunk, or help them with the tire, or keep the door open, or give up your seat or whatever. But then when you don't, they're yelling at you, willing to challenge you, and it's like, okay, if this person's so weak, but they're just so
Mhm.
aggressive about this, something is,
That's a good point. Have
yeah.
you ever experienced that?
I'm sure it's happened once or twice before. It's just not coming to mind right now. It's
Yeah,
like a
because I could totally
weaponization
see
of
that
it.
happening. I don't know if I've ever
Yeah.
experienced that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if I can name something. Be like, yeah, it was like, I'm weaker than you. You should do this for me. Blah blah blah.
Yeah. I mean, like, I've been the opposite of that is kind of where you're charmed into it. You know what I mean? Like, oh, well, don't you want to be a gentleman? You know what I mean? When it
Oh,
involves you doing something like I've definitely had that before. Um, I know for a fact I know I'm sure I've been shamed several times on this. I just can't. It'll come up later on here as we talk about it, and I'll be like, aha, this time.
oh. Mm. Well, so he talks about too about aggrieved entitlement on university campuses that men attempting to establish male support groups on female dominated campuses
Mm.
or who attempt to invite speakers sympathetic to men's health issues have frequently been met with fury for apparently removing the chivalric focus from women and their issues. Well, that you see in the news quite a bit of like,
Hmm.
we can't talk about men's stuff. We just have to talk about women here, which is actually, I think the Overton window is shifting because in universities they're saying like they're getting like past 60% women
Hmm.
and so and universities know they can't get too far down the this is almost like a female college
Yeah.
because then the men well the men aren't coming anyway but then the women will stop coming because the women have this fantasy of like meeting a guy usually at
Yeah,
college as
that's
well
right.
so they know they got to strike that balance but they can't turn away women either because that would go against the narrative we've been preaching for the past 50 years that we got to get women in school and careers and blah 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 so I've heard that this is quite a phenomena of universities having to be like well we can't openly say that we're going to turn women away and preference men because that's horrible but then what do we deal with we're getting past 60-65% women here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting thing too. I like that it related it to something kind of institutional like that, if I can use that word.
Mm,
And it made me think of, other things too, like I don't know, like if you think sexual harassment cases and stuff, maybe oftentimes people think of it happening to women, but women can in fact do that to men. And also things like
yeah.
domestic violence also I think plays into this a little bit. And that's where your, aggressive weakness comes in too, where they'll really try to weaponize that
Mm,
against the guy and get him on the hook somehow. And it's hard for the guy sometimes to prove that it was actually him who was the victim by her
oh.
aggressiveness. Unless there was some kind of camera footage there or something, she might have hit him and got a bruise on her wrist, and suddenly it's
Mm.
like the guy's going to jail. God, I don't want to paint too much of a nightmare story, but you know what
Well, have you
happens.
seen those?
Oh, I've heard so many stories of stuff like that happening. You
Whoa.
know, yeah, just even with people I know, I've known people that were lucky that they had things recorded. I mean, something in one of my buddies right in front of his house, he had a his girlfriend for a while, or they were going through a breakup or something, and she drove all the way to his house from like some 20 minutes away or wherever she lived, and was outside at like 1 a.m. causing a ruckus, and then she started attacking him when he went out there, but she was like screaming, trying to make it seem like he was attacking her, but she had been attacking him. And the only thing that saved him was he had a camera, I think it was like a Ring camera or some one of those things
Oh.
by his front door over there. And then
Mm.
so then the cops saw that and they were like, okay, do you want to press charges against her? But if that wasn't there, I think it would have went either way. If anything, probably against him because he's a bigger guy, and she's smaller. But
So he showed
that
them the live footage.
yes, and if he did not have that footage, I think it would have been way worse for him. So he was
Whoa.
very lucky in that sense.
Yeah,
So yeah, I've seen that happen.
stay away from crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, very much
Although,
so.
when you get a pregnant woman around you, boy, things get crazy there too. It's not even their
Yeah,
fault. Yeah, it's really not. I mean, it's just like the hormones are like, anyway.
I can understand that.
We all understand, but like, still, you got to keep it to a low roar here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
yeah.
it's funny. I was watching a Pearl one of her daily shows. I think it was yesterday, and she was talking about how a couple days before, menstruation is when it's like the most frustrating. And it's something maybe I feel like as a guy we don't often remember, but it is something that happens. So it's
Mm,
like
yeah.
probably good to be aware of that.
Well, yeah, there's actually there was a Pearl had him on her show, a hormone doctor,
Oh
and
wow.
he was talking about how uh, if you're because I think he became a hormone doctor because his wife had like severe hormone issues, and so he like had this quest to solve her hormone.
Wow.
Like, she couldn't have children because her hormones were so crazy and whatever. But anyway, he said like if you're married to a woman, you're actually married to four different people, depending on the time of the month, because the hormones affect the brain that much. It was like
Yeah.
really interesting. I'll send you the
That's
find
interesting. They
it.
must have maybe they brought up birth control too, because I've heard things about how birth control affects that, and sometimes if a woman gets off of birth control, it
Oh,
can change dynamics in the relationship also. It's even in terms of
yeah,
attraction. So they might be attracted to something different when they're on birth control, but then when
yeah.
they get off of it, then suddenly those preferences can change and it could affect the relationship in that way.
I've heard that.
So
I've
I've
heard that
heard.
too. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So
don't know,
yeah,
but
the
I just thought it was
hormones
super interesting that
definitely.
you're really in his view and his way to sum it up. You're really married to four different people.
Yeah, I've never heard that before. I mean, I'll keep that in mind. It's a good. I think it's an easy thing for guys to forget to consider that, but probably if you've lived with someone long enough, then you're just gonna know from
Yeah,
the
like it
experience of
is.
that.
Well, and have you heard the name Ryan Stone from the Married Red Pill
Yeah, he
space?
was he's I remember his threads from the old subreddit.
Yeah.
Rian Stone.
Well, yeah, yeah. It's kind of a weird way to spell Ryan, but
Hmm.
he talks a lot about that as far as like long term relationships and how a lot of guys, if they're intelligent, will kind of figure out the month cycle of like
Hmm.
what's kind of happening during the month. And it kind of related to what this hormone doctor was talking about, because like you're kind of married to four different people. So it's good to understand like where she is in that cycle there,
Yeah.
because that can explain things. And I mean, like, yeah, even like with my wife, sometimes it's like, boy, what's going on here? Like that. And then you wait a couple days and it's like I'm talking to a different person. And it was like, well, what happened last week? Blah blah. And it's just like, oh,
Yeah, like oh,
back then it's like you can't do anything right, and then like this week it's like, oh man, it's all
the
just
greatest guy
rainbows.
ever.
Yeah, rainbows and flowers, and it's great to hear like some of this married red pill guy like actually explain what's going on. Like,
Yeah, that's
anyway,
good too, because then it's like, I don't know, maybe it makes it over to get over certain things or just understand when you understand it, it's you
yeah,
can
you
deal
just
with
kind
it
of
in a
wait it
better
out.
way.
Like, okay, whatever, go rage.
Yeah, give her some space, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Anyway, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if that relates to chivalry that much, but whatever. So now, if you have um, multiple wives, and you can kind of time it so if she's in a good mood this time, then you just go over to the other, or you wait till she starts to get out of that good mood and go over to the other one. Hopefully, her good mood's starting again and whatever.
There
So,
you go. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. And you can
you
say,
kind
well,
of.
yeah, this one needs a break. Yeah, it seems like that's what kind of red pillars do, especially with like, well, like the ones practicing spinning plates. I think that was probably part of the overall, strategy there. Like, all right, this one needs to be put on the back burner for a bit here. What was interesting too, just going back to the chapter, was how this was aggrieved entitlement was something that was apparently recognized first, or at least cast onto men as feminism came up and the male
Oh
role, I guess you could
yeah,
say, got diminished. But they
yeah.
refused to apply that to women. And I thought that was interesting too, because it got into this discussion of narcissism. So it says when an individual fails to adhere to their traditional gender role, the bubble of narcissistic pride bursts, giving rise to aggrieved entitlement in members of the opposite sex. In the language of psychology, we would say the expectation of narcissistic supply has been cut off, and narcissistic injury and rage steps forward to address the grievance. Most readers would know that some of the worst examples of aggrieved entitlement by women are displayed by feminists, about whose behavior Ernest Beltford Bax was able to conclude weakness to whose claim chivalry may per se be granted forfeits its claim when it presumes upon that claim and becomes aggressive. Aggressive weakness deserves no quarter. So I just thought that was interesting because, this concept of chivalry going into sort of feeding this narcissism bubble, that when they stop getting their supply or the supply cuts off, they go into this kind of rage fit out of
Yeah.
frustration. And they used to accuse the guys, I guess, first of that, but refused to acknowledge that there was the same, kind of manifestation in women a different way when they stopped
Mhm.
receiving chivalry, which it seems like we're more in that now, especially.
Yeah, I think is he maybe talking about when men would expect to like come home and have and they're entitled to come home from work, have dinner on the table, like
Yeah.
be catered to, blah blah blah.
Please
I don't know
take
any
off.
men who remember those days. Yeah.
Yeah, or she. This reminds me of something. I remember when I was watching the Johnny Depp trial with Amber Heard, and
Oh my goodness.
I remember he said something about how when they first got together, how he came home one day and she like knelt down in front of him and like removed his boots, and it was a thing that she would do, but he was kind of surprised by that. Like it was this strange thing, I guess. And it's funny because it's almost like this complete cosplayed thing. It's like, look how chivalrous of a woman I am, or look how great of a traditional woman I'm being for you. Let
Submissive
me
of a
take off
woman
your
I am. I
boots.
take your boots off. Yeah.
Yeah, let me take my boots off for you, honey, and rub your shoulders or something. But like that was really hiding the face of what we then found out was Amber Heard basically throughout that marriage.
Yeah, but I mean that's smart on her part to really play
Play into that. Oh
yeah,
yeah.
play the fantasy. I
Mm,
mean, if you want to lock down the man, play the fantasy. That's
That's exactly what it was. And it was like right on cue, and then at the beginning, and then all of a sudden you go to sleep one day and there's poop on your pillow. You know? I don't know if you remember that, but
yeah. I don't know the story. All I know is him like saying was drinking a glass of wine and there was poop on the pillow or
yeah,
in the
he
bed.
lost part of his finger, I think, like part of his finger from her like slamming something on him or something. It was,
Whoa.
yeah, pretty sure that was the case. I'll have to double check that, but there were
Okay.
some serious things that happened. There was some real aggrieved entitlement and aggressive weakness
Uh,
going on there.
well, she sounds like she's probably just a mental case. Like I don't, there's a grief
Yeah.
entitlement, and then there's somebody that's like
I,
injuring her husband. Like you got to be kind of a nutcase to be injuring your husband.
yeah. Yeah, so that's something to if it seems too good to be true. That sort of takes us into the next chapter here. Can a woman be chivalrous?
Yeah.
Um, what's your opinion on that?
The ideas were interesting in that or I guess what we're calling chivalry by women is just kind of good behavior, or maybe behavior where they give deference to men. So I guess that kind of makes sense that you'd say, "Oh, this is chivalric behavior from
Hmm.
women." Like an example. Let's see, where was that example that he used? Uh, well, I think it was something like taking off the man's shoes when he comes home from work or something like that, kind of showing deference to him.
Fixing you a cup of tea right when you need one when you're in your study.
Yeah, yeah.
Break some cookies in there or something for you.
And yeah, the thing that's interesting too is like this is like easy stuff, like it seems like a lot of the chivalry on the man's part, boy, that gets a lot harder when the ship's sinking and you can't get on the lifeboat. Like,
Yeah, compared to making fixing a cup of tea, huh?
yeah, give me a cup of tea. Yeah, that seems a lot better than yeah, you got to go down with the ship. Sorry.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm trying to think of it too, and kind of in the style of trying to bring this from an individual level to a big thing. And I think, okay, because in a sense, there is this kind of virtue signaling style of chivalry. Like I almost think there should be a concept called political chivalry or something
Ooh, yeah.
where, yeah, where it's just like, and sometimes you'll see women do this or like feminists do this where they'll seem to champion a cause for some underprivileged group, whether they are or aren't. You know what I mean? And it's really about grabbing power. It's another type of aggressive weakness, but it's under the
Oh,
guise of being chivalrous and saying, we need to stand up for them whether it's true or not, and
Oh.
demonizing, whoever they want to demonize. And it seems like, both sides can kind of do this. And I wonder how much of it is kind of rooted in this concept of chivalry and well, in romantic chivalry to begin with, and did this thing get kind of pulled out of it?
Mm. Yeah.
So, when I think of women being chivalrous, there seems to be a lot of political chivalric type of aims. So there's like individual chivalry, and then there seems to be that kind of thing too, where it's like, well, I'm
Well,
gonna go block the freeway with this mob and be chivalrous for whoever it happens to be. Is that chivalry? Something I ask myself.
oh, yeah, yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. Yeah, I thought it was interesting in one of the quotes from 1938 when he says this tendency among women of making concessions to men for their inferior moral strength, I would like to term female chivalry. It is chivalry in the strictest sense of the term because it makes concessions for the weakness of the opposite side. And so I was thinking about that, the weakness of the opposite side. And it's like, well, I mean, men are stronger in almost everything compared to women, except the only thing I was thinking about, the weakness of the opposite side would be men have a much stronger sex drive for
Hmm.
it, which can be a weakness then. And so
Yeah.
a good one, a good wife would then no one understand that. And like in scripture, in the book of First Corinthians, it talks about how um, husband and wife they should not deprive each other except
Hmm.
by mutual consent for a time to pray. So other than that,
Yeah.
you shouldn't be. So, but I think a lot of times that really kind of needs to be a concession on the wife's part because she just doesn't have as strong of a drive in normal.
Yeah.
Like men have on average it's at least 10 times the amount of testosterone. I've heard like sometimes like
I,
17 times the amount.
I like how it says, she'll not deprive each other because, yeah, sometimes it might be her, like she might be pushing for it. The other
Yeah,
time, like you say, it might be mostly the man, but it's, it kind of goes in this concept of duty, to your
yeah.
spouse. And that's one of the things that could be wrapped up with that.
I
And
think there
also
is
in
a
this idea of
weakness there
chivalry
though. Yeah. Like that.
is,
Or go ahead.
well, I was just going to say with this concept of chivalry, typically this is men's duties to women.
Mm,
But when you think about can women be chivalrous, what are women's duties to men in that sense? And what you name there, it could be done more out of what's funny, they have a kind of derogatory but duty sex. But if you don't look at it with this negative connotation, it is about both spouses doing what they can to please the other spouse and
yeah.
take care of them basically.
Yeah, no, I think so because I think it puts your man in a compromised position if you're not available for him in that way, and that's why Scripture has that command.
Mm.
Um, even like I look at like Jeff Bezos,
Hmm.
and his wife, he married some secretary or whatever, and I don't, who knows how
Is
they're.
this the new wife
No, I'm
or
talking just his
before?
first wife.
Okay, got it,
But
got
who
it.
knows how their intimate relationship was? I don't know. But he gets from the story I've heard about the new wife. She basically weaseled her way in there and sniped him. And it's like,
Oh, I see. Yeah, it left it opening. It left it opening.
yeah. And I just wonder, like, well, if that to me, it's like this man probably is a phenomenal businessman, could see any kind of threat to his business coming,
Yeah.
but he certainly didn't see that threat coming, and it cost him half of his net worth
Yeah.
because that threat came in and sniped him. So I guess the point I'm making is his wife, if she would have been really truly trying to meet that need, would that have happened with this other woman? I don't. Maybe it would have. I don't know because men like
Yeah.
variety, especially
It's
rich,
interesting to
powerful
think
men.
about. Well, it's because, even if they're not, sort of rising to the occasion to meet that need, to either at least do their best to dampen temptation on the other end. It
Yeah,
seems like men not only, from a chivalric sense, are expected to go down with the ship and all these other kinds of things, but they're also expected to deny themselves and sort of curtail all their own natural impulses and temptations, which to some extent in a civilization you got to do, but
Mhm.
sometimes that can be used against them to such an extent that it's starts to border on ridiculous. Some people
Yeah.
are in there going years without anything, and it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. I
well,
just,
you're
it
not
just,
you're not a true gentleman if you're going to sit there and be upset about it or pout about it or whatever. I get that that's not attractive, but
yeah.
it's someone like Bezos. I mean, with as much as he has, I guess at a certain point, we're not saying this happened. We don't know, but at a certain point, that
Although
temptation
with,
can.
I guess maybe with the money and power that he has, maybe I'm being very naive to think that he
Oh,
was.
like he has so many offers and stuff. It's just a temptation on another level. That's like,
Yeah, maybe I'm being naive to think that he was 100% faithful to his wife. It may just be a thing of this woman was able to become the queen and not
yeah,
just, be the weekend fling for
that's
whatever.
a good point.
I
People
don't know
play a
because
long game. People play a long game. It'll start out and they'll work on that and massage that for a long time until
yeah,
they get their opportunity.
but that just made me think of like the concession of the weakness of the episode. That's the biggest glaring thing I can see is just the powerful sex drive that men have compared to women.
Yeah.
That could definitely be a weakness depending on how it's used there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's something to think about. Yeah, just kind of or just how we view it in general.
mm,
I guess a lot of the stories I'm familiar with is about temptation of the man being tempted.
mm.
There's probably numerous biblical stories where it's warnings against that, particularly for the man. I'm sure for the woman too. I'm probably just not thinking of them right now.
Well, in scripture, the adulterer is always seen as like the woman because the adulteress.
Yeah,
Because adultery is always defined as involving a married woman. So
got it.
you can't, at least according to the Old Testament, you don't commit adultery with a single woman. That would be fornication, but it would not be adultery. So
Ah,
adultery always involves a married
a
woman.
married. Okay.
So you are, essentially stealing the property of another man because she is
That's a th
his and you are taking possession of his woman. So anyway, yeah,
but yeah, that's interesting to think about right there. It's classed differently. Do not covet thy neighbor's wife, or
yeah,
specifically
yeah,
the wife it's mentioned there. So
yeah. And the Ten Commandments is right there. Yeah.
yeah.
Um. So that's yeah. Anyway, I guess we're getting off topic with chivalry, but yeah, that's kind of interesting stuff. Um. What else was in chapter 9 then? I mean, it's a lot of quotes. Um, I don't know if you noticed
Yeah,
anything
I
else.
think it was more about showing that there were these references to women having at least practiced some type of chivalry or being expected to have some kind of reciprocal
Oh,
duties. I guess that's what it gets into also, the reciprocity of these things.
well, yeah, because it talked about the order of Sisters of Charity,
Hmm.
whose deeds are known to the whole world, may be considered an aristocratic or chivalric female army of volunteers of charity bound to short terms of service, but generally renewing their vows and performing prodigies of usefulness. So they were out like doing good deeds. But it seemed
Yeah.
like if the way that they were defining chivalry before, though, was it was gendered to women doing things for men. Uh,
Yeah.
and this
Yeah,
would
see
seem
that
like
that's
it's,
a good point because is it chivalry if it's just for people in general or kids
yeah,
or elderly or something?
yeah,
But it doesn't really seem like it's about what they do for the opposite gender specifically, kind of in the
mm,
same way that men, and that there might not even be that on the woman's side so much, which might, kind of reveal just how much romantic chivalry was used to pedestalize women and put men in this kind of position of self-sacrifice, you can say, specifically for the other gender, not just for the community at large or, kin.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, another one said, I mean, chivalric, we are glad to know that such a noble and chivalric woman has her being among the toilers of the overwrought East End, and trust that her good deeds have not gone unrewarded. It seems like it's more about, good deeds for everyone, but is it for men specifically? I do like the last paragraph of this chapter, and I think this is Peter Wright's voice again after the examples. He says, "We live in a time now of great convenience, and if relationships are to mean anything going forward, they will need to be based on some kind of reciprocal chivalry.
Mm,
And the good news is that men and women can demonstrate their brands of chivalry differently if they wish a co-chivalry that can be respectful of similarities or differences as agreed between individual men and women."
mm.
So I like that. I mean, in the sense of it, looking at it from a positive way forward, with men sort of understanding what's happened here in the past and maybe forging some type of new social contract. It doesn't have to disregard men and women's innate differences, but it can actually take them into account and maybe
Mhm.
voice what those are and say, hey, this is what expectations make sense, especially in this age of great convenience that we live in.
Yeah, I don't see how we moving forward, especially with the younger, with the like the Zoomer generation.
Hmm.
I don't see how we're not going to have reciprocal chivalry, or else we just won't have anything there.
Yeah.
It seems like the younger men, they are not interested in being chivalrous at all. Uh,
Yeah, it's just, and that's where all this discussion of them, walking away or not participating or whatever it happens to be, or
yeah,
they'll try to couch it in this male loneliness epidemic or say men are falling behind, but it's really just men understanding they don't want to take a bad deal. It's just
yeah,
not justified for them. So they will have to come back and offer them something or some type of change in whatever the norm has been in
yeah.
order to incentivize these men to want to participate in this.
Yeah, I do think there's just less of a willingness to be the plow horse that, slaves away at some job you don't like
Hmm.
while your wife, she's at home, take watching the kids, but just I mean basically living the life of leisure, and I
Yeah, I think maybe some men would have, I guess, been say, okay, this deal is tolerable if it's monogamous and there was some guarantee from an at-fault divorce system that says, all right, well, if you're going to toil, at least you have some protections here. But if you're one of 20 plow horses, then maybe it's like, this deal's looking worse
yeah.
than it's ever looked before.
Yeah, I mean, I was just like, I don't know, Shaw. Sometimes it's like once you see it, you can't unsee it. I just look at some of my friends. I had a buddy of mine, his wife's posted on Facebook, like, yeah, I'm wondering what a good dance school would be for my daughter so that I can take her to dance class and
Hmm.
blah blah blah. And she's a stay-at-home mom who homeschools her kids and blah blah. And I think that means probably they don't get much schooling, maybe it's like 2 hours a day or something. I just thought, aren't you the dandy though? You just get to take your little daughter to the dance classes and watch her do her cutesy little
Yeah.
dances.
Get
And
some
oh,
pictures for
isn't
social
this so
media.
fun? Blah blah blah. While your husband's at work for 10 hours a day, and it's like,
Yeah. Go
I
get
know that's the
Starbucks with the other moms afterwards or something.
exactly, and that's what I'm saying. Like, how is this a fair deal?
Yeah.
And then that like this guy, like I know him personally, he can't even hardly get away for one night during the week to go to like a men's group or something because he's got to
Yeah.
watch his kids. And it's just like, how did this deal? And
Come about.
I think this is fairly typical too. So it's like, how did
Yeah.
this deal come about here?
Yeah. Well, and then it's just like it's only made worse that like the sort of Damocles constantly is above this guy's head in terms of family law. It's like at least give this guy an at-fault environment to live in. You know what I mean? Like, okay, so whatever, he's willing to do that, but if it's that and then if he does want to have a cigar with the guys one night or something, and then all of a sudden she's not happy and it leads to this horrible destruction. God forbid, too. I wouldn't want that to happen. But it's just it's just like, gosh, how bad does it need to be? You know? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, and you've helped me kind of realize this too with like the dowry and like, women should bring something to the table
Hmm.
besides just, well, I'm here, whatever. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
I mean, more,
And then,
I saw a quote, yesterday. I was actually telling my wife about this. I thought it was funny because it said, a stay at home mother, we say, has the toughest job in the world.
oh gosh,
Have
yeah.
you seen this
That's
one? But
the,
then it says,
oh yeah.
but what do we say about the stay at home dad? And I asked my wife that. I was like, what do we say about stay at home dad? She goes,
Oh, he's lazy, doesn't want to work.
yeah, she goes, well, he's a lazy bum. And I
There
was
you
like,
go.
oh,
Well,
wasn't
that's the
that
hardest job
interesting?
in the world. Well,
Same job, but if a woman does it, it's the toughest job in the world. If a man does it, lazy bum. Like, now,
that's fantastic. I love that. I love that example. I never thought of that. That's hilarious. And it's true too. There's like,
so
oh,
true.
he just got in that home all day,
Yeah.
like he's doing nothing.
Exactly. And
But
that's what
then when
everybody
it's
would think too. Oh, what?
yeah,
Oh, he's just taking care of the kids. Yeah,
yeah.
whatever.
So you're married to a bum, huh? You're just living off your wife. So you're just mooching off your wife, huh? Okay.
Exactly. Isn't
Oh,
that
so he never
interesting?
worked? He never worked for the whole marriage, huh? So he never did any work. Okay. That's so true.
So I
That
think
makes
that I was thinking about that and I was like, man, I think that plays perfectly into our chivalry discussion because it's like, how can we think about these exact things, same things, so differently?
yeah.
I think it just goes back to chivalry. That's the only
Yeah.
explanation for how we can have that much cognitive dissonance for like these two things. If a woman does it, it's the toughest job in the world. If a man does it, he's a lazy bum.
Yeah,
Like
who doesn't want to
what?
work. And it's just right out of the gate. I mean, if someone has a chivalric culture understanding, it's right out of the gate. As soon as you hear it's a guy, there's this assumption, and as soon as it's a woman, there's this pedestalization version of
Mm,
that assumption.
yeah.
Um, and gosh, and that's one I think people will do today without even thinking twice about it.
I think that's a good one to bring up to just like wake people up. If you say, "Oh, you don't believe in shit, you think we're equal or shit," okay. Here's an example, and they'd be like, "Oh, well,
Yeah. Like, yeah, it is hard. Think about all the stuff she has to do and all the things she's given up and, all the kids. And that's a job you don't just get to clock out of that one. You know what I mean?
and then just put the shoe on the other foot, and that's it."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Yeah, the other thing that makes me think of, I know it's not really probably chivalry related, but it's always like, oh, well, I gave him kids. Like, I gave, these are your kids, but it's like it's half him and it's half you. Like these are your kids too. Like you can
Mm,
look at this child's face and see your wife's face and that kid's face. You know what I mean? It's like it's both of you
yeah.
guys. You're both doing what you can for these kids and sacrificing. Like, why are you making it seem like you're doing a labor job for him? It's for your kids, you know?
Or yeah, and this is, I mean, at least the people I know, this is what most women would rather do. It's not like, oh no, I want to work 50 hours a week and then come home. It's,
Yeah.
nah, they don't really want to do that.
I've heard women say that to me, I mean, older women too, like, oh, taking care of my kids was the greatest pleasure I could have ever had, and they look fondly upon that and saw it as a privilege to do that and to use that word.
Yeah,
Especially if you get to be a stay-at-home mom and do that, and
yeah, live the life of leisure.
yeah. Uh,
Well, why
It's so
not?
weird. It's so weird the language around that and how it's just like, oh, this poor tortured Cinderella of a woman and the guy he's just out all day just, playing cards and smoking cigars and whatever it is he does out there, you know what I mean?
And then they follow him to work for a couple of weeks. And it's
And
like,
then he comes
man,
home and he does nothing. Well, I don't know because it sounds like he was out there, on a jackhammer all day or something. And a lot of guys I know who do work hard, they do come home and just like this gentleman you were describing,
mm,
they come home and they start spending time with their kids and they do stuff and they're, whatever they can do on the weekends and gosh, some guys will do even cooking and cleaning. I've seen this, so it's just like, uh,
Yeah, I don't
anything men
know.
aren't given enough credit for all the stuff they do around the house.
Yeah, I think that's why the younger generation is kind of walking away from, just the traditional marriage deal here is kind of my guess because I think just generationally, the baby boomers kind of brought in the what was the start of mothers working outside the home and kids going to daycare and that kind of stuff. And then the Gen Xers, it really started to become the norm that
Yeah.
that was going on, that both parents were working and or I think more so of the norm. And then like with the millennial generation, it was like, well, this is what everybody does. This is like what you have to do. And it's like we're in these egalitarian marriages, we're both equal, we're both doing blah blah. Even though we know we're not really equal because of chivalry and whatever else, but we say we're all equal and yada yada yada. And I think like now that we get into the Gen Zers, they're just looking at this and being like, I don't know if I really want to do this equal marriage thing.
Yeah. I was reading something earlier and it was a woman complaining or something about um paying half the rent or living with her boyfriend for some amount of years, and they're all just like, yeah, oh, and you're paying half the rent or whatever. But it's like, what would you be doing if you weren't living together with this person? You'd be paying full rent somewhere. I mean, I don't get it. This helps both of you to split the rent and have somewhere to live. And
Yeah, this
Gen
bum,
Z's
he
looking at
doesn't
that.
pay for everything. What a bum!
Yeah. Oh, I've had to help with that. Like, yeah, you mean like an adult human that has to pay their bills? Is this what you wanted? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So he
yeah,
pays everything and then like you just pocket your money somewhere. I don't get this, Like what why are you upset? Just
yeah,
all these little wacky things. And that's this kind of weird like chivalric sort of culture mixed with this one foot in, one foot out thing we got going on. And Gen Z has seen this. They saw their parents' generation deal with it and they're just
yeah.
like, yeah, no, thank you,
I
and
think especially they saw their fathers and uncles and
get
who
dragged through it all. Yeah. That's
deal with
that's
it. And they're like,
yeah, or like maybe they realize, or like if their dad had trouble getting custody, they didn't see their dad as often, and then maybe one day they were finally able to understand kind of what happened or piece it together somewhat.
mm,
Yeah, I mean, I think the children of those generations have not had as good as a go as prior generations in terms of how they grew up, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, life, economy and living in America is great, but I mean, in terms of family and structure and
yeah,
having both parents in the home and not having to see one person having some new person come in and out every few months or something that they don't know. And who knows? I mean, there's just so many things there
yeah.
going. So yeah, they've grown up with that kind of in the background in their experience, and it's informing how they're making decisions.
That's my feel for it, but I don't know.
And
That's
then it's
just
like
kind of
you
my
can,
conjecture on like, well, I think generationally this is kind of what happened, and I wonder if that's
yeah.
why we get to this generation and they're just like, nah.
Well, and then they'll try shaming them to, that's where you get your language like the male loneliness epidemic. Men are falling behind according to these metrics or whatever.
Hmm.
And but I don't think that's working to make them want to kind of get back on the plantation, so to speak. I think a lot of men are still like, no.
Oh, I actually just talked about that. I was teaching in church on Sunday, and I talked about the male loneliness epidemic, but I was more talking about it that like men who are married and have families just have no friends. Uh,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So they're lonely in marriage.
yes,
Well,
that
yeah,
that
it's
was
also
where
like
I was
having a
going.
yeah, well, sorry to interrupt you, but it reminded me of another thing too, because it's like, I've heard this notion of can you be an incel within your own marriage? So it's like you can be a lonely incel technically within a marriage. And sometimes that marriage itself might even be the thing that like is a barrier for, like you said, I mean, in a kind of maybe you could say romantic chivalric style marriage like that, it's harder for them to make friends or it's harder for them to get away or they got the
Yeah,
sort of Damocles over them.
well, yeah, because here's the examples I gave was Dr. Robert Glover who wrote No More Mr. Nice Guy.
Yeah, I didn't read the book, but I am familiar with it.
Great book. I'd recommend reading that.
I've
But
seen it over the years recommended. I do
oh
need to
yeah,
read that.
great. Well, I think that's one of the three recommendations for from the Married Red Pill.
Hmm.
Or like the three main texts that they say to read or whatever. But anyway, so he was on a podcast talking about he has these men's groups, and he says a lot of the times these men's groups are so hard to get formed because the wives of the men they won't let them out of the house almost. He's like a lot of these
Oh.
guys they feel like they have to get a hall pass from their wife just to go to this men's group, you
And
know?
it's like, where are you going? I'm going to a men's group. And it's, hey, maybe this is why the Freemasons were so popular, because then when she asks, you can just say, honey, I can't talk about it. I'm going to the lodge. And like that was the men's group.
Yeah. But I was like, I totally see what he's talking about with a lot of the people I know and whatever. Like I was down traveling for work last week and I was talking to a guy that I was working with and he's got, he's about my age, got three kids and, goes to church. And I asked him just like point blank, I was like, hey man, do you have any close friends that, or like a close friend, just one
Yeah,
that you talk
sure.
to that you can share like deep things with. And he looked at me, he's like, no,
Gosh, that makes
and
me feel not good. I feel bad for that man.
but no, and I actually talked about that in my, at church. And I said, like, I think this is typical and this is the male loneliness. And this is something that's bad. Like we should fix this.
Hmm.
Like
We should.
this should not be the norm. So I talked about there in the Bible, there's a story about David and Jonathan. One of the like they had this like covenant relationship with each other, covenant friendship, and
Hmm.
I'm talking about King David, and this is King Saul's son, Jonathan, and then King Saul's trying to kill David because he wants the throne and whatever. But so we're talking about this story and how they had this amazing friendship, and I said this should be the norm here. Like every
Yeah.
guy should have a Jonathan. Like it shouldn't be this like freak thing. Like oh man, you have like a best friend. Like whoa, that's weird.
Yeah, that's such an interesting thing to think about. And then, if they're upset with men kind of gravitating towards the manosphere, that's one of the reasons why. I mean, there's nowhere else to, they don't have anything in their
Communities.
life that they can, yeah, community. So it's like then suddenly they're online and they're comparing notes over there. And,
Mm,
there's a lot of different things over there, but bringing something like that and passing that message along, I think is something that could really help folks,
yeah.
especially in the, the church community there. So gosh, that's tough. I mean, it's tough to imagine, especially for older guys, or I guess, sometimes you look at a guy, maybe this is a type of chivalric thing too, or especially if they're a family man and you think they just got it figured out for the most
Mm.
part. But when you dig a little deeper, that's not exactly the case. And like you say, it's more
Well,
common than you think.
well, yeah, and the other thing I was talking about Robert Glover, and then the other example I gave was I was listening to the Aaron Renn show, which I like. He's a Christian guy.
Mhm.
He used to have a show called The Masculinist, and then he just kind of changed it to the Aaron Renn show. But
I
yeah,
have seen his stuff before.
okay, yeah, yeah. He usually has really good guys come on, really interesting topics. But
Hmm.
he had a guy come on that had a men's ministry for divorced men in the church because this guy was talking about he was a divorced man and kind of what he experienced. But he said usually when a divorce happens, the guys usually leave the church and they don't come back because a lot of times they feel so isolated because just kind of like we're talking about, they don't have very many friends, and the friends they do have are
Yeah.
the friends of their wives'
Yeah.
friends'
Like they're,
husbands.
yeah, there you go. So it's all,
So
so when the divorce happens, they're probably gonna be on the wife's side or not talk to him as much
yeah, they're either on the wife's side or they just don't want to get in the middle of
involved.
anything and
Yeah.
probably make their wives mad. So
Yeah.
they're just like that. So he was saying like a very typical thing that happens is these guys feel extremely isolated because they have like no one to talk to and they just like kind of fall away. And so that was his ministry was like ministering to guys who have gone through that and trying to pull them back into the church community again.
Yeah.
Uh, so I just thought that was interesting. Like, man, the guy, like, because again, lack of real male friendship, like, it's just kind
I,
of.
It's interesting to think about because I feel like there's a corollary there with young men who aren't married. So on the one hand, there's these guys that are married and kind of lonely in marriages, and then there's young men in their early 20s. I remember my 20s, I think were pretty tough as far as this stuff goes.
Hmm.
And one thing that like I consciously told myself, especially after college, was that I was going to make an effort to keep the friends that I had in my life and reach out to them. So I got a few buddies even still from high school, and
Yeah.
we chat, text regularly, and every couple weeks or so we'll go and grab a bite or go do something or just work on something, whatever it happens to be. And I'm looking back, I'm just so glad that I did that and made that conscious effort. Like, hey, I'm gonna reach out to this person.
Yeah. No,
And
that's
say, hey, do
good.
you want to hang out? Let's do something or whatever it was. And it was something that I really had to consciously make the effort for. But looking back, I'm very grateful for those friendships. And I think they really got me through a
Mm.
time in my life that I would say was very challenging, especially as far as loneliness and these things kind of go. So it's interesting on the other end with someone who maybe gets married sometime through there or whatever, and as the years go by and they're just doing what they're doing, and
Yeah.
it's just not healthy to not have
I,
people to talk to like that.
well, yeah, and I think it's harder. It's sometimes hard to make friends when you're married because then it's like you need to try to make friends as a couple. So it's like, well, does his wife like my wife, or if
Yeah,
she makes a
that sounds like a
friend,
whole challenge.
do I like her husband? Do we really want to hang out together? And blah blah. Like that's all big. Like, ooh, that's kind of a
Mhm.
mess. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah, the front end of that, like I could think of some of my buddies who got married. Like I know some guys that, I mean, I got buddies that they were born, in the houses basically in the hospital, but around the corner, just around the corner, and I've known them since I was children. And I know two of the guys who were right next door to each other, and one of them got married, and I remember the other one didn't really like his wife, and
yeah.
they still chat, but the hanging out definitely diminished a lot. But they're still in communication. But on the front end of that is when people start getting married and you got friends and some of that stuff starts to come up. But if
Yeah.
they're your friends, you got to be honest with each other at least to some extent. Tact is always good, but
Mm.
certain things maybe you got to get off your chest. So,
Yeah, I mean, then I got a friend that his wife forbid him to come over to my house. So, I mean, I guess
oh
you get that
gosh,
too.
wow. God, what are you doing at that house that he got forbidden from going there?
Well, I
What's
think
happening over there?
if you want to know, she was
Is there
watching
a
some.
Ouija board in the closet somewhere? Like what?
No, here's the deal. She was watching. I think they both together were watching some of my videos, and then
Oh no.
she was like, "Oh, this guy's a bad influence. You're not allowed at his house anymore." And I was like, "Okay."
So do you guys go to the same church too?
We used to, yeah.
Okay. Oh, that would have been awkward. Maybe you'll come around someday.
Man, yeah, he got yeah. Anyway, what can
He
you
had you on the cell phone playing in the kitchen while he was doing something, and that was
do?
he couldn't take it anymore. She was like, "It's him or me."
And I was like, yeah. And
I'm sorry.
the specific video was, I was saying something about, we got to hold these women accountable for this bad behavior. Boy, I guess she didn't like that.
And
So,
she was like, "Account this." And it was just
yeah. Well,
well,
on
yeah.
that note, Sean, I probably better get going here, but it was
All
good.
right. Yeah. Hey, this was a pleasure. This was a pleasure
Yeah.
reading this.
Well, this is Shaw and I discussing chapter 8 and 9 of the book Chivalry. I hope you liked it. Good stuff. Talking about the rage that comes when chivalry is withdrawn. What can we do? Well, we're going to get it turned around, and we are getting it turned around because Christ is winning. He is building his church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Until next time, this is the Post Millennial Man.